Hello guys, welcome back. In this lecture we will set up Cloud9 IDE in our AWS account, which we will be using throughout the rest of the course. So to do that you need to log into your AWS account first. Then you need to go to Cloud9 IDE service. So this recently visited menu might be slightly different in your specific case. So to find the Cloud9 IDE service, you need to go to the search box at the top of the web management console and type Cloud9. Then you need to select the Cloud9 IDE service. On the landing page, we need to hit the Create Environment button and set up the name for our Cloud9 IDE. So let it be my Python environment. And then we can leave all the settings as a default. So we are going to use a new EC2 instance. We will set up the size of this instance to T2 micro, which is the smallest virtual machine in AWS Cloud. We will leave the platform and timeout for this Cloud9 IDE set to again default settings. So basically what it means is that Cloud9 IDE will automatically stop our EC2 instance and prevent AWS from charging for compute power for that EC2 instance in 30 minutes. So if you are not touching your Cloud9 IDE during 30 minutes, it will automatically pause the virtual machine. So the rest of the settings will be set to the default settings, and we are hitting Create button. So the Cloud9 IDE instance will be launched in a couple of minutes. So to open the Cloud9 IDE, here in the environments section of the Cloud9 IDE interface, we need to choose this open menu from the table, and I'm opening it in another tab of my browser. So as you can see, Cloud9 IDE is preparing our environment. While it is doing that, we need to do one additional extra step. We need to give Cloud9 IDE additional admin account permissions. That is required just because by default, when the Cloud9 IDE environment is started, it inherits our user session permissions, and it prevents basically us from doing certain API calls to AWS Cloud. And that's exactly what we would like to avoid. So to do that, we need to create an additional IAM role for this EC2 instance. To do that, we need to go to the IAM service. Then in the IAM service, we need to create a role for our EC2 instance. We are going to the roles in the access management and hitting this Create Role button. So here we need to choose an AWS service just because we are creating our role for our EC2 instance. And then use case, we need to set up or select this EC2 option. So next, we are going to another screen where we have to select permissions for our role. Then here, I would suggest us to filter all the roles by the name administrator access, and here in the list we need to select this administrator access policy, which will basically grant this role permissions to all services, to all API calls to all the services in our account. Next, we are scrolling down, hitting next button. As the role name, I would suggest us to use the same name for the role, like my Python environment, Cloud9 IDE EC2 instance role, and the rest of the options should be unchanged. And we are hitting Create Role button. So Cloud9 IDE will use that specific role to do any API calls to our AWS account. So as soon as the role is created, we need to go to EC2 service and find our Cloud9 IDE instance. To do that, we are going to Running Instances tab, and then we are choosing our Cloud9 IDE instance. It starts from AWS Cloud9 and then basically the environment name of our Cloud9 IDE. We are right-clicking on the instance, choosing security, and modify IAM role. Here in the list of roles, we are searching for just created IAM role. Here we go, my Python environment Cloud9 IDE EC2 instance role, and hitting update IAM role button. As soon as that is done, we can go to our Cloud9 IDE interface. We may close the welcome page, and we need to go to preferences. So in the preferences settings, in the menu of the preferences, we need to scroll down to AWS settings and choose AWS resources. Here in the credentials section, we need to turn off AWS managed temporary credentials. And that will basically help us and tell Cloud9 IDE not to use AWS managed temporary credentials, but use the actual role which we assigned to the EC2 instance with the admin permissions. So to check that our Cloud9 IDE is now using the role, we can type AWS get AWS STS get caller identity command in our terminal, and that will show us an ARN of our assumed role, which is my Python environment Cloud9 IDE EC2 instance role. So as soon as that is done, that means that we will be able to make any API calls to our AWS account from our Cloud9 IDE instance. We will have admin permissions, no restrictions and limitations. And basically now we can start our journey.